Welcome
to the Bring Me to Life podcast.
It's time to wake up
and shine on. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Bring Me to Life podcast. Shannon Shine here.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in once again. We really appreciate it and excited for today's episode.
Yeah, so today we actually have a special guest on, and I'm super excited to hear more about their story. So can you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, friend?
All right. Well, first of all, hello, everybody out there. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you so much, Shannon and CeeLo, for having me here. I've known about your podcast for a couple of years now, so it's a real pleasure to be here. My name's Hendo, and I'm currently based in Guatemala, and I've been based between here and Costa Rica for about the past 5 years, and yeah, I'll share a little bit more about my story, but just who I am. I am an infinite being, a divine love, sent here to radiate that light outward so as to facilitate the transformation and co-creation of new earth. I'm a 500-hour ERYT, meaning that I've done 2 yoga teacher trainings. So I love teaching yoga. I love to infuse elements of mysticism in it, such as connecting with the earth, using the body and the poses to still the mind so that it can create somewhat of a trance state. I also hold ceremonies and facilitate sound healings and other group activities. I love to just guide groups and to harmonize energies. And then I also teach and practice a lot about permaculture and sustainability here at the Mystical Yoga Farm. And I'm actually on my way towards becoming one of the owners here at the Mystical Yoga Farm. So I'm super stoked to be here and to share you more about our project and what we have going on here.
Yeah, sounds like you have a lot of really beautiful things happening.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear a lot about the different sustainability options and permaculture you got going on there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you ended up there at the Mystical Yoga Farm? I know so many of our listeners are always intrigued by people who travel internationally, and I've heard a lot of people talk about how beautiful and amazing Guatemala is. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey there?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to. So yeah, I started my journey in the EDM scene, or like the rave scene, just partying. I really loved the plur aspect: peace, love, unity, respect, and the unity and the love vibrations that I felt there. And I grew up in Texas, so a lot of what I was doing, and during this process, I discovered meditation and kind of broke away from how I was raised in mainstream Christianity. So I started exploring meditation and astral projection and different spiritual modalities. And just where I was living wasn't really supporting that. All my friends were still into drugs and alcohol and some of these other low vibrational practices. So I needed to get out. So in 2013, I had this opportunity to go to this big festival, EDC, in Chicago. And I went there, and my intention was actually to, after this festival, to just run away into the forest and live by myself, live with the land, and to lead a group of plur warriors, what I referred to them as at the time, into the forest and get away from what I now understand as capitalism. And, a lot of this stemmed from, no matter how much money I made, no matter how much I worked overtime, I was getting paid good, I just never had enough, and I never felt fulfilled. And I was working for other people in something that didn't really nurture my soul. So I went to Chicago and ended up staying there for a couple months. And in the process, found Electric Forest in Michigan, soon after that, I ended up at this ashram in Michigan called Song of the Morning Yoga Retreat. It's a Yogananda center, and stayed there for 10 months where I learned about yoga and Kundalini and sound healing and all sorts of things. And I was living there under my intention of living in the forest without money and without capitalism. So I was actually volunteering there. And so I wasn't getting paid, but I also wasn't spending any money. So I had my room and board covered and all of my food covered. And at the time too, they were only serving vegetarian food, which I had wanted to make the shift to vegetarianism for a while before that, just didn't know how. So that was my introduction to that. And while I was there, I made the commitment to myself, I'm never going to go back to the regular world, so to speak. I'm only going to be living in intentional communities. And during the time, I also discovered that my dharma and my purpose was to eventually run an intentional community. So in the process, I found this place, Omega Institute in New York, where I learned about mysticism and more shamanic journeys and men's circles and sweat lodges and all sorts of things. After that, I went to this permaculture farm in Colorado and ended up doing my permaculture design course and learning about sustainability, off-grid living. And then I had this opportunity, again, all these places I wasn't making any money. I was just volunteering there. So I had this opportunity to go to Costa Rica for this festival called Envision to work there. And so I actually also wanted to do my yoga teacher training in Costa Rica. So I made this GoFundMe to make, the goal was 3,500, about 500 for my flight and then 3,000 for the training. And essentially I ended up making just enough for my flight to Costa Rica with $60 extra. So I went to Costa Rica with $60 in my pocket, and I went to this festival. And in the process, I went to this Cacao Ceremony yoga flow and found out that the Mystical Yoga Farm does trainings, and they have work exchange opportunities for discounts and scholarships and things like this. So kind of put that in the back of my mind. And then I continued to travel around Costa Rica, just hitchhiking, I went to a rainbow gathering for 30 days and went to some other communities there. And I made the commitment to myself that I'm not going back to the States. I'm not leaving Central America until I've done my yoga teacher training. And people thought I was crazy. I had no money, and they were like, oh, how are you going to do a teacher training with no money? And I'm like, I'm just going to embody being a yoga teacher. So I taught almost every day at the rainbow gathering, taught yoga almost every day. And I just embodied being a yoga teacher and kept saying it, kept casting that spell with complete faith and belief. So 3 months later, my visa was running out in Costa Rica. So I hitchhiked up to Guatemala and was landed at this place called San Marcos in Lake Atitlan, where a lot of the cacao from the world, it's essentially the origin, the birthplace of the cacao ceremony. This guy, Keith, the chocolate shaman, pretty much brought cacao as a spiritual medicine to the Western world. And so I was living there, and I was actually like couch surfing while I was there. And Mystical Yoga Farm is actually like way across the lake. You have to get there by private boat or you have to walk. So I essentially walked along this trail to get there. And I showed up and wanted to speak to the manager. And I'm like, yo, I'm Hendo, and I have all these amazing skills. I know about permaculture, and I've lived in community, and I want to do my yoga teacher training in exchange for my work. And the manager at the time kind of looked at me like I was crazy and pretty much laughed in my face, which was fine. I was kind of used to that. And she's like, I can't really do anything. You have to reach out to the school. Here's their contact. I'll let them know that you came, and blah, blah, blah. So I went back over to San Marcos, and I actually met one of the facilitators of the training that I wanted to do. And I told him as well, I'm going to do this training, yada, yada, yada. So while I was there, we worked out an agreement to where I was making a payment plan of $500 a month. And I had no intention of making $500 a month, nor going back to the States or working or anything like this. And so I just agreed so that I could do my teacher training. So I did my teacher training and accumulated $3,000 worth of debt in the process. And then soon after my training ended, through a series of very special and unique circumstances, ended up becoming the manager here. And the manager's payment was $500 a month for 6 months. So I ended up actually exchanging my teacher training for being the manager here. So I did exactly what I set out to do a yoga teacher training for free, and not necessarily free, because I put 6 months of my time working 6 or 7 days a week, countless hours a week, and put all of my love and energy. And during this time, I really discovered that this is my home. Grandfather Rock, who's this giant cliff face that's looking over our property, he's kind of like the guardian of this land, kept coming to me in these visions and these dreams, like, you need to be here, you need to be here, we want you here, yada, yada. So I returned the next year as the permaculture coordinator, and in the process created the permaculture zone and started implementing some zero waste practices and things like this. And then while I was there, Grandmother Tree, who's a big tree that is overlooking our property, she actually fell on the morning of the winter solstice in 2016 and smashed one of our 3 yoga shalas, and actually our nicest one, in the process. This led to lots of drama, to say the least. Some things were happening with the owner and this and that. I won't get into too much detail, but essentially the message was that the owner needed to transition away from the farm, and in the process ended up renting it to this newlywed couple that had just bought property nearby that was using the farm as a base while they built out their property. And while this happened, I was actually in Costa Rica. I spend every February and March in Costa Rica doing some work on projects and communities there. And while I was there, I was doing these business lessons with a friend of mine in exchange for spiritual lessons. And I made this 5-year plan, and on my 5-year plan, at the end of it, was becoming the owner of the Mystical Yoga Farm. About a week later, after putting this like on paper, the owner emailed me and said, "Hey, I just did this 5-year rent to own plan with this couple, and at the end of the 5 years, the ownership will be up for grabs. And so if someone wants to buy it or blah, blah, blah." And so I'm like, oh, wow, what a synchronicity. So I have 5 years to continue to work and give my energy to the farm and
to manifest some magic, it sounds like.
Yeah, seriously, it all lined up. So
it sounds like you're a pretty prime example of manifesting your destiny and like the universe taking action when you set your mind to something. And I love that you shared that story, because so many of our listeners, they're trying to feel into that vibration, like you said, where they don't want to go back. I call it the Muggle world, because I'm a Harry Potter kid. I'm like, I don't want to go back to the Muggle world. I want to be able to stay where the universe has my back, and the universe has this magic ability.
Where the people believe in magic.
Yeah, to provide us with our dreams. And I love that you're going after your dreams there and creating a sustainable community.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to wrap up that story to bring you to where I am now. So last year, they came up to me, the people who were renting it. They actually ended up splitting up, and it was just this one dear sister, Bree, who, shout out to Bree, love you so much. She was kind of a little overwhelmed. She wasn't fully invested in the project and was doing it from a place of love and service. And in 2019, we met up in Oregon, and I was going to actually tell her that I wanted to be the owner, like on the 3rd day of the Beloved, this festival there. And she told me, the first conversation we had, she's like, "So do you want to be the owner of the farm?" And I was like, yeah, actually it was on my 5-year plan, and it's only been 3 years, but you know, everything's happening a lot faster these days. And then we were kind of in contact at potentially sharing the ownership, this and that. And then the owner came January, and based on the meetings that the 3 of us had together, she realized that her time here has been served, and she's ready to transition into something that's more aligned with her heart's passion and her life purpose, her dharma. So I ended up signing a rent to own, went to Costa Rica, came back in April, and then am now renting the farm with the intention to be the owner. And I'm not going to be the only owner. I'll share about the ownership and how we're going to be structuring that a little later. But so now here I am renting the farm, and little did I know that there was going to be a pandemic. I actually came back from Costa Rica 3 days early. We went to the airport because the borders were closing here, and I barely made it back to Guatemala. So it's definitely been a challenge with the pandemic and everything. But I feel super blessed to be here and focusing a lot on getting a lot of repairs and our systems really upgraded to that next level for when we open up again.
Mm-hmm. It seems like in the United States there's a lot of crazy stuff happening. What's it like in Guatemala right now? Is it seem any different from what's going on in the world?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know what it feels like in the States because I haven't been there, but I definitely get my fair share of Facebook news from friends that are there. Yeah. In terms of the social unrest and protests and things like that, it's definitely not as extreme. In terms of regulations and restrictions, it's actually been quite a lot where we've been the most quote unquote locked down country in Central America. And how it's been since essentially April is mandatory masks anywhere in public. Luckily, I have, this big home that has a big property. I haven't even left the property one time since April. Wow. So I don't need to wear a mask really, but mandatory mask wearing. You couldn't travel between departments or between different towns and such. As well as some of the markets were closed. You can't have big events. Churches weren't going, schools weren't going. And tourism is obviously not a thing right now, not even in inter-country tourism. A lot of people that live in the city, go out to Lake Atitlan or to other places around the country to kind of get away from the city. So that hasn't been really a thing. So a lot of people, I think people are more affected by famine and hunger than they are the actual sickness, and so things are there's definitely some unrest around and there's lots of restrictions, but everybody is still super nice and helping out. And there's lots of fundraising and different organizations that are helping people. And we've been doing a lot of fundraising and different creative ideas to gain funds. And we've been able to support our local indigenous staff members during this time. So they've been continuing to work at half time, which is not ideal for them, but it's better than nothing. And we're doing our best. And just yesterday, actually, the restrictions lifted a little bit. So now there's a little bit more travel. Churches can open up to 50% capacity. The curfew just got extended. It was 5 p.m. every day since April, with Sundays completely locked down. And it just recently lifted to 9 p.m. curfew every day. So Sunday is no longer locked down.
I'm glad you guys are getting a little bit more freedom, but doing it safely. I know you mentioned that there's some different fundraisers and stuff going on. We have a group on Facebook called the Bring Me to Life community, where if you have any links to those fundraisers, you can share them in there for people to check out. I think you're also a mutual friend with Robin Letman that goes by Bloom Music. I know he's been doing a lot of different permaculture fundraising, and I believe he's in Costa Rica right now, but I know he does a lot of stuff in Guatemala too. So I've been trying to keep up with some different fundraisers and stuff that's going on over there for you guys.
Yeah, I definitely know Bloom. He's a good buddy. We were just actually, before I came here to Guatemala, we were in the same community in Costa Rica, and he was at the Mystical Yoga Farm here in January as well with us.
He's another magical being we've had on the podcast pretty recently, and yeah, he does a lot of fundraising and stuff for different places. I know he's been raising some for money for Kenya and things too. So, like I said, I'll send you a link after the podcast. So if you have any information on how people can help serve you guys out there, let us know. But I am curious. You said you haven't left the farm, and you've talked a lot about sustainability and permaculture. What are some things you're doing there on the farm to help it so that you don't really have to navigate too much and keep yourself healthy?
That's a great question. So I don't personally leave the farm, but our local staff does go to the town to go to the local market. And the market is essentially a farmer's market, but it's open every day. And it's how most of the locals here support themselves. And so we've been just sending them over to the market and grabbing food. And then we've been, during this time where we haven't been holding as much space for guests and students and stuff, we've been growing a lot more food. So currently we're at about 30 to 40% eating from our land. So all of our salads, we have essentially unlimited squash. We have lots of cucumbers, zucchinis, things like this. And we make our own sauerkraut. So we've been staying healthy just by eating from the land, fasting occasionally, making our own sauerkraut and fermented goods, as well as eating organically.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Eating really well. So what kind of food are you able to grow out there and on the land that you have?
Well, we live in a really special climate. It's kind of, a lot of people call it subtropical, and it has a high enough elevation to where we can grow most temperate things, and we get hot enough and it never freezes to grow most tropical things, aside from some of the more tropical fruits like jackfruit and guanabana and things. But we're essentially able to grow anything that grows in the States. We grow a lot of kale, lettuce, mustard, arugula, collards, tatsoi, pak choi. We have like 7 different greens, spinach, about 7 different greens that we use in our salads. We grow a lot of tomatoes. We grow loads of squash. The squash actually kind of takes over and makes our land look more like a jungle than it is.
We've been realizing that this year too. This is our first year growing squash, and it kind of took over my whole garden.
Yeah,
it gets wild. You got to kind of tame it a bit, train it like a puppy. And we grow zucchini, cucumbers, radishes. We love radishes. We've been pickling our own radishes. Onions. We just started growing garlic and ginger, turmeric. Actually, a lot of these root vegetables, I've tried to grow turmeric and ginger here before in the dry season. And we water our garden, so a lot of things still grow in the dry season. But turmeric is something that I planted a bunch of it in January, and it actually didn't even start popping up until May when it started raining. So we grow a lot of turmeric and ginger. We're experimenting with garlic, going to see how that harvest goes. We grow some onions, carrots, and then a lot of fruit trees. We just started we have an upper property. We have 3 properties. I'm at one of them, and then we have our main property, and then another more undeveloped. It's like kind of in the forest, and before the owner has only used it for coffee growing. And we've actually been doing group projects there once a week with the locals and the volunteers and transforming it into a food forest. So we've got limes, mandarins, bananas, avocados, mangoes, and we just planted more bananas, some papayas, 200 more coffees, and we are working on, it's been a little hard because of the restrictions and such, but we're working on getting this package that will have some cacao trees, some sweet sop trees, and some other things. So the intention of this food forest, we're not going to really harvest anything from it this time around, but the intention is to provide food for our farm and also the local indigenous community for the next 7 generations. So that's super exciting.
I love that.
Yeah.
it sounds like a lot of different foods that are right up my alley.
It sounds so delicious.
So I was curious if you could you explain what permaculture means for someone who's never heard that term before, and like what it means for you?
All right. Well, so the term permaculture was founded by this brother called Bill Mollison and his compadre, David Holmgreen, I believe. And their definition is that permaculture is a philosophy of working with rather than against nature, of protracted and thoughtful observation rather than protracted and thoughtless labor, and of looking at plants and animals and all their functions rather than treating any area as a single product system. So that's the more official definition, if you will. And when I teach about it, and what it really means to me is observing the patterns in nature, because nature is naturally abundant, observing these patterns in nature and implementing them into our own systems so that we're working in harmony with nature, and that each system is actually feeding the overall system. And so the three main ethics are care for the earth, care for the people, and return of surplus or fair share.
Thank you for sharing that. I know there's a lot of people that are wanting to be more caring of the earth and more useful of their things they have access to just in general. So I know something else that you're big on there at the Mystical Yoga Farm is zero waste. And how does that kind of go into play with the concept of the permaculture?
So permaculture, it's all about sustainability and using the resources that we have available so that we don't extract, that we rather regenerate. So we've had for a while a few systems, but we just really upgraded it. And you can actually see all about it in our permaculture tour on YouTube. And I'm going to be, once our new resource center or recycling center is complete, I'm going to do a full-on tour of that. But one way, soft plastic is a big thing. About 50% of the soft plastic that we have here at the farm actually washes up onto our lakeshore, or it's just thrown around along the public paths near to where we live. So we do like trash pickups and stuff. So soft plastic is funny because when they introduced plastic to this region before they introduced a waste management system. So there's currently no waste management system. And if you take your trash out, quote unquote, what they actually do is they gather it in this big truck and they throw it off the side of the mountain where no one lives. And the thought of that just like pierces my heart because I love Earth so much. And so one way we've combated that is that we save all of our soft plastic and our hard plastic, and we create what's called eco bricks, sometimes called bottle bricks. And essentially you take say a 3-liter bottle, or I'll say a 6-liter bottle of olive oil, something that we buy that inadvertently comes in plastic. And so we save it, and then we actually, with all of the soft plastic, we wash them and clean them and dry them, and then shove it into this bottle with a stick until it becomes rock solid. And it becomes literally as hard as a brick. And then once this is complete, you can then use it in constructions such as cob couches is one thing that I did with EcoBricks in Costa Rica. And we actually, so because we're a nomadic community and we have a rotating crew of people, a lot of the people that have come here actually haven't really done the EcoBricks properly, which means that they have to be stuffed really tight from the beginning. If there's any air, then when it's mixed with earthen plasters like cob, then it doesn't really work. So what we did in creating our new recycle center, we actually dug out some of the floor and then filled it with put a layer of concrete, which is one of their main building materials here, concrete and stone. And concrete, a lot of people don't think it's that sustainable. And some people have their own opinions, but actually concrete is essentially crushed up rock that's heated at 400 plus degrees temperature and powdered. So it's really cheap and easily available here. So it's commonly used, and the locals are concrete masters. And so what we did, we dug out this big hole, we put a layer of concrete, and we had about 150 eco bricks from 5 years worth of collected soft plastic in these hard plastic bottles. And we put a layer of concrete down. We put all of the eco bricks. We put a bunch of broken glass, old wires, like electrical plugs that people bring here that break and you can't do anything, metal cans, all sorts of stuff, and essentially stuffed it into this big hole and made like a concrete sandwich, stuffed it down, jumped on it, pounded on it, put a bunch of rocks on it, and then put a new layer of concrete. So I have this joke that it's creating like a trash fossil, and 1,000 years from now, someone's going to dig it up and discover this trash fossil. So the main intention with that was to just make sure that this plastic isn't being leached into the earth. In addition to that, we made a new wall made out of stone and concrete, and along the concrete bits, we used 10 years worth of broken glass and ceramics to make a mosaic, and we used some of the nicer eco bricks to make some designs. And I even made a recycle symbol mosaic, and with a border of 5 years worth of bottle caps.
That's funny. I think that's really ingenious to be able to use, what would be considered garbage or trash or whatever into something beautiful like that. I lived in Detroit for a while at Fireweed University, and there we used old like glass bottles for windows with cob and other things like that, because a lot of abandoned buildings, they don't have any windows, so the community gathered up what was around them and made the windows for it, and it actually turned out pretty beautiful, some of them. So I think, doing stuff like that is so cool, and it's so good to see, because like you said, just seeing garbage out lying around, or even like in the ocean, or getting animals trapped, it's really heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's really sad. And I know that that's something that wasn't in my mind frame kind of growing up. I grew up in a very consumeristic, I don't know if that's a word I'm making up right now, very whatever, they like to buy lots of stuff, and they didn't use it very much, and they just collected all these things. And I have this bad habit of being somewhat of a hoarder, but it's not because I want the stuff or the attachment to the stuff, but I'm so afraid of just getting rid of it and not finding a better purpose for it, because I don't want it to just go to a landfill somewhere. So it's made me more mindful of what I do invest any money into, and definitely like where the stuff goes and doesn't just get thrown into a landfill somewhere. So thank you for sharing that. I was going to ask too if you had any other like little useful tips that people could use at home, maybe wherever they're listening, to kind of get their mindset in the permaculture mind frame.
Well, I mean, it boils down to the 4 R's of recycling. It's like, it starts with refusing. If someone tries to give you a plastic bag at the store, don't accept it. If I forget to bring my reusable bag to a store when I'm in the States, I'll literally open up my shirt and put it in there, or just put it directly in the cart and load a bunch of random fruits and vegetables in the back of the car. So the first one is refuse. And a lot of stores have bulk sections, and you can buy jars. So just replacing plastic or single-use plastic with reusable plastic, and getting in bulk where you can. A lot of stores are now incorporating bulk sections, and you can even get things like olive oil and honey free of plastic. And when you can get things in glass, that's a much better use. So refuse plastic. Reduce. So reduce the amount that you use, reduce the amount that you consume. Recycle. And so that's just not only recycling as in putting it in your green bin that you put out in your driveway every 2 weeks. It's like more like recycle like put it back into a cycle. And that's something called upcycling, like using it as it already is, and then reuse. So you can reuse things. If something comes in a Ziploc bag, just save it and use it for something else. Or if something comes in a jar, save that jar and use it for something else.
Yes.
A nice tip with one thing that we love to do with things like cans, like metal cans, and some plastic bottles that we don't use for the eco bricks, or even like old like bins or containers that break. You can use them as planters. Just pop some holes in the bottom and a few in the sides, and then fill it with dirt, and then use it as planter boxes. And that's been a really beautiful way. And you can actually, I'm sure there's a lot of things online that you can see on how to make beautiful planters, but we have sometimes we get this biodegradable soap that comes in these little plastic little tubs, and we've created planters out of them and macrameed with yarn or some kind of string to make these like hanging succulent planters. So that's another way. So to just find resourceful ways. Another way is art. So if you have a bunch of glass bottles that you're not going to reuse, you can get a circular, or it doesn't have to be circular. Circular is nicer. Get a circular piece of plywood, drill some holes in it, and put the bottles in. Get some Christmas lights, the icicle ones, and then put all of the little icicle bits in the bottles, and the other lights around the top of the plastic are top of the plywood, and then you've got yourself a chandelier. So actually, in our dining area, we have an amazing chandelier that's made out of reused bottles and plywood and Christmas lights.
I love it. I'm so glad you brought up art in the planters, because I'm always trying to figure out what I can recycle for planters, and I'm always saving the glass jars too. We eat a lot of pasta, and I get sad because there's so many jars and stuff from it, but I haven't had to invest in like mason jars or anything in a long time, because I just make sure I use them up and store whatever I can in them, and I collect them from friends sometimes, and it's an interesting thing, because I'm like, you don't need to throw that away. And like starting to recycle too was such a mind opener, because again, being in a family that just consumed a lot, things got thrown away and you didn't realize how much you really went through. And just the last decade or so, we've been kind of collecting all of our pieces since CeeLo got here, and I've seen how much plastic really does like pile up, and I'm always trying to like organize as much into the recycling as I can and reuse it however possible. So thank you for sharing some of those tips and ideas.
Yeah, another way, like, not everybody is going to make these eco bricks and build a cob couch in their backyard, so you can stuff the soft plastic into hard plastic bottles and then use it as a chandelier in the same way. And of course, it's not going to be the most fancy looking thing, but you can have it in your garden or something. And once you collect enough of them, then you can make a beautiful, beautiful art with these eco bricks as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure Pinterest has a bunch of ideas.
Definitely. I would love for you to share a picture of some of the different recycling ideas that you just shared too, like your chandelier and stuff in the group. I'll make sure to send you a link when we get off, because I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I'd love to. And I'll be sure to leave the link to our permaculture tour as well that goes into a lot of that, but the pictures will be a little more easy to you won't have to commit as much time to look at a picture. So.
Well, whatever kind of information you want to share with the community, we'll hope to be able to share it out there. I'd love to know more about your different opportunities and mission too. I know you've talked a lot about the mission, but some of the things on our points to chat about were some integrating the indigenous community and how that works with your farm.
Yeah, so we're guests here on this land, and the indigenous people have essentially given us permission to be here. And a lot of our local staff, for sure, and even now that we've been around for so long, even people in the outside community have opened up to us, and they actually love that we're inviting people from around the world to learn. a more sustainable way and to transform and to grow. So we have a permanent staff of 10 indigenous people, and their work here actually supports their whole family. And their families aren't like the typical, United States family of like a husband and a wife and 2 kids and a dog. It's actually like 8 kids, 14 cousins, and 3 dogs and all of these things. So their work here actually can support their whole family. We also give back to the community whenever we can. We haven't been able to as much recently because of the pandemic. We haven't been generating as much income, but we give donations to the locals, and actually 100 quetzales, which is the local currency, which is approximately $13 US, can send a kid to school for an entire semester. It might even be a year. I need to double check that, but for an entire, at least half of a year for $13. So each year we have in the past, funded anywhere from 10 to 30. Again, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. We fund kids to go to the school. And one of our big intentions and ways that we're going to give back is to create a place where the locals can come and, for example, use our internet, or I have this vision. It's in the 5-year plan. It's going to, require a good amount of abundance to do this. But one of the intentions is to obtain the next door property to us and to create a community center for the locals with a basketball court and a soccer field and like a wood shop where they can use our tools, because they don't, a lot of the locals around here don't really have access to power tools. They just use hammer and nails and hand saws. So one of our intentions is like that. And the biggest thing that I'm actually really stoked to share and to present, I'm still working out the numbers and the details, but with this whole ownership, it's actually going to be a shared ownership where I'm only going to have a certain percentage. And then there's going to be a certain percentage saved for sweat equity, people that come here year after year and want to continue to contribute their time, and they can earn percent ownership through their time here. And then there's going to be a percent ownership that's bought through investment. That's also going to help me to purchase the farm. And then what I'm super stoked about is that a certain percentage, the number that comes to my head right now is 15%, but I'm still, crunching the numbers, is actually going to be reserved for our local staff, our local workers who have been working here 5+ years. And then a percentage of it is also going to be owned by the local village. And the local village is about a 15-minute walk away, and it has a population, my educated guess would be about 300 to 500 people. So a percentage of the ownership is actually going to be owned by them, and then a percentage owned by our staff, so that they will not only receive their biweekly salaries, but they'll also receive a portion of our yearly profits. And then a portion of our yearly profits will also go towards funding the local health center, as well as the school, as well as the local municipality, so that they can get some communal resources. Like they make tortillas a lot here. So I really want to be able to fund I forget what it's called. It's like a grinder. It essentially grinds corn into powder. So things like that is one way that we're integrating the indigenous community. And we've had in the past, and we're going to, once restrictions open up again, offer free yoga classes for our staff and anybody in the nearby village that would like to come and participate.
That's beautiful. I think, hearing about something like this is so cool. And I think it's the way it should be done and should have been done for in many centuries.
Super inspiring to hear how involved everything is, and how much love and intention you're really putting into the building of this process.
Yeah. It's not like you're coming over to colonize and take over everything. You're there to just help out and be a part of it and share it. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the main things, like so many things, retreat centers and other places in Central America and Latin America, because it's like generally a lot cheaper to live here. People can build a house for 40K, including the buying of the property, and people can build a, high quality resort for like 100K, whereas in the States, you'd be lucky to get a house for 100K and lucky to make a resort for 500K. So a lot of people really kind of take advantage of the economy here, and colonism is something that's, constantly brought up, and something that I've been seeing even more now since the pandemic. But it's something that my heart goes out to these people who were, invaded and forced to be Christian, and to leave their beliefs behind and to sell their land and stuff like this. So one of my, most passionate aspects that I want to bring here is to really balance that out with giving back to the community and actually supporting them and helping them to get some of the resources that they don't have as much access to.
That's beautiful. I definitely want to touch on your spiritual practices in just a second, but is there anything else that you want to share about like your volunteer program or your community in general?
Yeah, I'd love to. I just want to share our mission and our vision real quick. And I kind of just am paraphrasing this from our website, but it's that we are an off-grid spiritual sanctuary focused on healing, transformation, empowerment, and sustainability. Through the practice of yoga, ceremony, mysticism, and permaculture, we co-create thriving nomadic community in harmony with nature, while inspiring the creative life force in all beings and giving back to the local community. In doing so, we offer a living, breathing example of a sustainable and spiritual lifestyle, inspiring all who come to make a positive impact at their homes.
I love that.
Taking that in for a second.
Yeah.
That was a lot. And it's really beautiful.
Yeah. So you asked about our volunteer program, and this is what makes us a community. And this is what really sets us aside from a lot of retreat centers that I've been to. A lot of places that I go are either a community or a retreat center. Now, there are some places I have been in the States that are doing both, and that's actually what inspired me a lot. Like the Omega Institute was a big inspiration for me. They have over 100 volunteers there, and they also have a super successful retreat center. And it's something that wasn't so present here before I came. I heard stories that there was some sort of volunteer program back in the day, but when I arrived in 2015, it wasn't so present. So one thing I don't want to say I brought it here, but I definitely made a stronger emphasis and focus on is our volunteer program and in our community. And one of the reasons was because I was getting kind of lonely just living here with only students and guests coming, and I wanted people that would actually live here. And I'd say my biggest inspiration for that is that when someone's volunteering here, they're living here, they're doing what's called karma yoga or selfless service to the community. They're actually embodying the lifestyle. They're not just here participating, they're actually becoming an integral part of our systems and learning how to stuff trash, learning how to maintain temples, learning how to build with natural materials like sticks. We build a lot with just sticks here. And so it's hands-on experience. And this is something, when I went to college for 1 year in Dallas, Texas, and I didn't learn anything except for how to hold down my alcohol.
Sounds about right.
And I didn't start really learning until I dropped out of college, and learning with my hands. And I discovered that through working hands-on and doing these labor jobs, I was actually learning a lot more. I learned how to use a drill, something that my dad never taught me. I learned how to use a saw. I learned how to build a shelf. I learned how to shovel and to dig holes and to put a post in the ground. And, so a lot of this, our main intention with the volunteer program is to give people an opportunity to learn and to create hands-on experience while they're living the lifestyle, embodying these permaculture principles and this sustainability, while also having the time to really dive deep into their spiritual practice.
Yes, school in the mainstream sense, for me at least, it didn't work as well as it could, where, being a hands-on person, that's an easy way to learn, but sitting at a desk for 6 hours when you're a little kid and you want to go and like be physical, it's really tough.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing I got from college was debt. Like, it taught me how to be in debt and how to owe the system and how to be frustrated. I mean, I learned a decent amount in college. I'm pretty lucky because I went for like multimedia and art, and I'm technically doing a multimedia and art network. But if I wouldn't be making it myself, like, the jobs are pretty limited out there for a lot of college students right now. So it is powerful to get out there and get your hands dirty and to do the things like this year when the great pause happened and everything started shutting down. This is the first year that I've actually like forced myself to go out on the land because I have access to like at least an acre of land, and I wanted to have a garden for so long. And usually we're traveling and going from festival to festival and things like that in the summer, so we haven't had a lot of time to focus on it. But this year I got out there, and like a big stress reliever was getting connected with the earth and building our garden. And like we said earlier, our squash has taken over.
We got a lot of tomatoes.
Lots of tomatoes, lots of squash, got some cucumbers and peppers coming. But yeah, getting out there and like getting in it, there was no way like to learn that. I did a lot of online research and I was grateful to have the internet, but unless you get out there and do the things hands on, you're not quite learning it properly, I don't think, personally.
Oh, exactly. There's nothing that will teach you how to do something more than doing something. I have this joke that I say to the students that we do yoga teacher trainings here. So I have this ongoing joke that I tell people: nothing teaches you how to teach yoga like teaching yoga.
Right.
So nothing really teaches you how to do something than to actually do it. And I think that every single person in the world should know how to build a shelf and to prune a tree and how to make a garden and how to mulch. And like, these are very basic, primitive things that have been really lost to our modern world. And that's one last thing I'll say about our like community and the volunteer program that I find really special. And I find that perhaps it's missing a lot in some of the spiritual communities. We have these sound healings and astral projection and meditation and all of these things, even the physical yoga practice and singing, all of these amazing spiritual practices, which are all great. I practice all those things and I love them. And something I see that's missing a lot in this community is grounding. All of these things are all about expanding and fifth dimension and multi-dimension and plant medicines and psychedelics, and all of these things are very expansive and they show everything. But if we were meant to only live in the fifth dimension and only astral project, then we would just not have incarnated on Earth. So I think that grounding and anchoring in that into a practical sense is really empowering and really important in the world today. So, when people volunteer here, they actually get their hands in the dirt and they start building and using their body. And that's what our body was made for, to be used, so it gives people an opportunity to really ground and anchor that spiritual experience into this physical realm.
Yes. Nothing like getting some dirt under your fingernails.
Yeah.
Dirt don't hurt.
God made dirt. Dirt don't hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I started out gardening with some gloves on, and now I'm like, these gloves are just in my way. I'm like throwing them away to like use my hands and get in the dirt. I planted some sweet potatoes earlier this month. That was pretty exciting. And like when I first started, like I said, I had to have my gloves, and I was trying to make perfect little holes. And then I was like, you got to get a little dirty to make some things happen. And I'm pretty mind blown. That was a permaculture trick that I learned, was when a sweet potato or a potato starts going bad and it starts sprouting, you can actually grow more potatoes right from that potato. I've planted like several sprouts from just 2 sweet potatoes, and I have like a 10-15 gallon bucket that is like overflowing with vines and potatoes right now. So I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And that's permaculture right there. You observed that it was growing new growth, so you naturally put it in the ground. And that's the first permaculture principle: observe and interact. And so by observing these aspects of nature, these different systems, then we can, use them for our benefit. And I think that right there, observe and interact, just aligns so much with so many spiritual teachings like Buddhism, becoming the observer, and different things like this. So really these principles and this lifestyle can be applied in every level.
It's kind of magical being able to interact with a seed and then watch it grow from a little baby to like a full grown plant and then bearing fruit. It's so magical. It's like such a cool video game. Like the graphics are great.
Recycling all the things. I hatched an avocado. I keep saying I hatched an avocado because it was a seed for like ever. But I hatched an avocado seed and have a little baby avocado sprout popping out of it. That was pretty cool. So there's like little things you can do to explore. You don't have to have a whole farm. But you've been mentioning a lot about your spiritual practices, and we are a spiritual network, and we're all about being able to explore spirituality. So is there anything else that you want to share about the spirituality exploration you got going on out there?
Yeah, I'd really love to. So I'll just explain about the temples that we have here, and then I'll go into like what we do in them. So we have 3 yoga temples. 2 of them are completely wall-less. They're just open view to the forest. A tea house for tea ceremonies, a sound healing dome with really wild acoustics, and we have a couple gongs and singing bowls and other fun stuff. We have a temazcal, which is a traditional Mayan sauna, or like a place for sweat lodge. It's a little, you're not building it with sticks every time. It's like a stone permanent structure, but you still make a fire and everything. And it's for purification. We have our lake and our dock. And then we have, which is my favorite space, our fire circle. And our fire circle, so it's stones around the pit, and then a little place for dirt where we can make offerings and like little mandalas and things, and then a grassy patch around that with a stone wall around it. And in each of the directions, there's a carved stone from a local Mayan shaman that comes and carves things and paints things for us. And he carved them out. So in the south, we have a serpent head. In the west, we have a jaguar head. In the north, we have a hummingbird head. And in the east, we have an eagle head. And so that's one of our core foundations of our spiritual practice. So this is something called the medicine wheel. And the one that we go by here, there's many different medicine wheels. And the school that does a lot of trainings here does a lot of things in Peru as well. So we use the Peruvian medicine wheel as a cycle of transformation. And it, starts in the serpent, which is like shedding layers, connecting to the earth, releasing traumas. And then it moves into the jaguar, which is like facing the darkness and facing your fears and moving through with fierceness and courage. And then it moves into the hummingbird, which is all about joy and creative expression and silliness and fun. And then it moves into the eagle, which is all about the grand vision and manifestation and everything like this. So definitely, ceremony, magic, and mysticism are at the core foundation of who we are and what we practice here. And that includes things like plant medicine and all sorts of different fire ceremonies for rituals and release and things like this. And then, of course, our name, the Mystical Yoga Farm. Of course, we practice yoga, meditation, and mindfulness. And we practice, we have daily yoga, which is like the Hatha yoga, your traditional like downward dogs and, connect to your breath and meditation and things like that. And then we also practice bhakti yoga, which is like devotional singing or mantras or medicine music, things like this. And then karma yoga as a spiritual practice as well. And karma yoga is like the selfless service. So the core foundation of who we are, our main spiritual practices, I would say, are mysticism and yoga. So like ceremony, prayer, singing, medicine music, making offerings, like an earth-based practice, and then yoga, that of really connecting your body, mind, and spirit, and calming the mind, and really allowing that mindfulness that's cultivated in our morning yoga practice. That mindfulness can then be applied to every aspect of our life here.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. We actually had a question in the chat from our friend Mooney, who said that she would love to learn about yoga in a way that allows her to teach others and hopefully offer classes in the future. And she wasn't sure how or where was the best place for her to get that kind of information and that kind of training.
So I'm a little biased, but I will tell you that the best place to get that kind of training is here at the Mystical Yoga Farm. So that actually perfectly segues into what we offer here. So essentially, this place was made for yoga teacher trainings, and we work with a specific school called School Yoga Institute. You can look them up online. We also have links to their offerings on our website, and they do about between 4 and 6 yoga teacher trainings here. And it's really special because it's actually a live-in yoga teacher training. So it's like an intensive. So you come out for 21 days, and it's formatted along the medicine wheel, how I was sharing about the serpent and jaguar and everything. Mm-hmm. So each one has a cycle with different spiritual practices, with different yoga flows and everything. So that's a 21-day all-inclusive immersion that really allows you to dive deep into your spiritual practice, as well as give you all the tools that you need to become a yoga teacher. And like I said in the beginning of this podcast, that's kind of where my journey here at the farm started. And so if you were to do a yoga teacher training here for 21 days and you wanted to stay for however long afterwards, then the opportunity to volunteer here and to practice teaching yoga at least once a week, as well as really living the yogic lifestyle, and that really is the best place to start. We also offer shorter yoga retreats. I host one that is called Permaculture Spirituality Yoga. It's 5 days. It's usually in January. We have different Kundalini yoga retreats, like yoga and mindfulness, yoga and art, anything you can imagine. Mm-hmm. We're actually, our 2021 schedule is open for anybody out there that's listening that is feeling called to host a retreat here. We'd love to offer things. And we're also expanding into offering not necessarily yoga related things. So we really want to host a women's retreat. We want to host a conscious men's retreat. Yes. There's going to be an art retreat coming up. We actually are in contact with Spirit Science, and Spirit Science is looking to do a retreat here in January or March, if you're familiar with their YouTube channel. And then we also offer permaculture courses, like permaculture design course, intro to permaculture, things like that. So those are all ways that you can learn more about yoga. And even in just living here for a month, you'll learn so much about yoga just through coming to all of our morning yoga practices.
Yeah, that sounds so cool. And I love that you do so much with with that space. And you kept saying sound healing and meditation, and that those are my jams. So
astral travel, yes. You love astral
and
travel.
Then you're doing all this. Yeah, I think it's awesome what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's what permaculture is about, like integrating all of these things into one. And before I started running the farm, my personal business was called PSY, like psychedelic, and it was all about reaching altered states of consciousness naturally. And it was the integration of permaculture, spirituality, or mysticism, and yoga. So yeah, I think it's really special what we have going on here. And I'm super honored to be a part of it and to help it expand. And we're definitely looking for collaborators of all kinds. And so we have, our volunteer program, which is super epic. We have all these retreats that you can get involved in. You can host a retreat. We also have investment opportunities. So if you're someone out there that's looking to invest in a conscious project and become deeply involved in this kind of new earth co-creation, then we have different options between 30 and 100K that comes with partial ownership. And then we also have a membership program for 15K US that gives you 1 month all-inclusive access to the farm for the rest of your life. And it comes with a few other perks, discounts on retreats. You can participate in all of our offerings and ceremonies for free. And it also comes with discounts for hosting a retreat. So a lot of our people that come here like to host retreats too. So this is a great opportunity. And all of these investment opportunities, like the membership program and the partial ownership program, is actually how I'm collecting the funds to buy the farm. Like I said, I'm just renting it right now. So some of these investment opportunities is how I'm collecting the abundance to buy the farm. And the goal is to buy it by June 2021.
We'll keep manifesting all of that abundance your way.
Yes, abundance.
Sending you some good love there. I've been really enjoying hearing the stories and all the things that you've shared. I was wondering if you have what's your most mystical experience from the Mystical Yoga Farm? What's been like the one thing that stuck out to you and changed your whole world?
It's hard to stick to just one. I mean, in terms of like multi-day experience, I would definitely say my yoga teacher training, because it was just jam-packed with ceremonies and offerings, and it really introduced me to a lot of things. But in terms of like one standout memory and experience, I would say it was my first Huachuma Ceremony, which is a plant medicine from Peru called San Pedro. And it was facilitated by this epic brother here that facilitates trainings as well. And it's essentially a 12-hour experience. And this medicine is oftentimes it's used kind of side by side to ayahuasca, but it's actually a completely different category of medicine than a tryptamine. So ayahuasca, DMT, mushrooms, and LSD are all tryptamines, and they work on a certain level of the psyche. And then San Pedro is actually in the same category as things like cacao and MDMA. And I don't use, synthetics anymore. So the San Pedro experience is like cacao on steroids. So it's a 12-hour experience, and it's not even really psychedelic. It's more just increases the awareness, and they call it the cactus of vision. And so I was having full, not visuals like trippy stuff or like images that aren't there, like visions into my life. And it was my first year here. And that's when Grandfather Rock, the guardian of this land, came to me and essentially told me, like, we need you here. We love you here. And that was when I felt definitely the strongest connection to this land and got the clearest message and the download. And the beauty about doing, medicines here, and one thing of what I teach is how to reach these states without medicines. So this kind of opened the door to kind of being constantly in contact with Grandfather Rock and the spirit of this land. And I've really taken that experience with me everywhere I go. And it's such a beautiful medicine. And just a beautiful place. And that's the medicine that it brings, is connection to the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Yes.
That is pretty mystical. Thank you for sharing. So I think we're getting close to the roundup time, but I do want to just hold space. Is there anything else that you feel really drawn to share with us right now, or anything that we may have skipped over?
So I feel like we covered most of it. Just looking at my notes of topics that I wanted to mention, in terms of like sustainability, and another way that we've incorporated that into our systems is that we're completely off grid. So we're not dependent on any outside source to power our lights, or to make our blender make amazing smoothie, or anything like this. So we have 9 solar panels on our main property, and then 2 panels at the property I'm at now that has better reception. So just with the sun itself, and this is either number 2 or number 3 of the permaculture principles, is catch and store energy. So the sun, you know how much energy it has. You see it, it literally powers and lights the world, but it's only open for, here 12 hours a day. And then there's 12 hours where it's just dark. So we actually catch and store that energy through the solar panels, and then it gets stored in these batteries. And then we have, just from the sun, enough energy to run a Vitamix, to, light up our spaces, to charge our phones and laptops. And it also powers our water system. So we have a solar pump that's connected to our main system, and it actually pumps water from the lake up into our tanks, and then it goes through a series of filters, and then the last one being a UV filter, which kills 99.9% of all bacterias and things. And that UV filter is also powered by our sun, and our hot water for our showers is also powered by our sun through a solar thermal thing. So we call ourselves a solar powered sanctuary, and that's our solar electricity, but also the energy that we get and the prana that we have, because we don't really stay up very late here either. We kind of rise and set with the sun. So I think that's really special about what we have. And it's another thing, like grid tied systems, a lot of those systems are powered by the coal mines, and coal mines are extractive, an extractive economy and part of capitalism. So nothing against anybody who's on the grid. I totally honor that, and it's really efficient, and it's how the cities are powered, but one thing that really sets us aside is that we are off the grid, and that we get all of our electricity from the sun, which is amazing. And the last thing that I want to say is that this is the cacao capital of the world. I noticed in your story, Shannon, that you said something about cacao and something, it's going to be a great morning or something. I really loved that. And was like, oh, perfect. I'll write cacao in my notes. So this is really Lake Atitlan, like the cacao capital of the world. And a lot of the ceremonial cacao out there these days are coming from Guatemala. So that's something that we really, that is our medicine here. We only do other plant medicines very, very rarely, and with very well studied and initiated facilitators. But cacao is something that we really integrate into every aspect of who we are, our yoga, our ceremonies, everything. I can't remember the last full moon ceremony where we didn't have a big pot of cacao.
I love that. Yeah, I've been incorporating cacao into more of my ceremony recently, and I do want to give a shout out to a friend, Brooke, that she may also be a mutual friend. She has traveled back and forth to Guatemala, and she does Cosmic Earth Wellness, and I know she's big with the one of the families that helps with cacao out there, and has been helping people over here in USA get access to the good quality cacao, and support of helping some of the the actual farms and places that are growing it sustainably out there. So it's really powerful to hear that it is such a big part of the ceremony out there. And I'm somebody, again, who I really love chocolate in general. So finding like a healthy ceremonial version that is like supporting to the earth and grounding and not full of unnatural sugars has been a really nice part of my ritual recently.
Beautiful. Yeah, like cacao, it's becoming, pretty trendy in like the superfood and health realm. And a fun fact about cacao is that cacao powder actually only has like 15% of its medicinal properties. About 80% of the benefits of it come from the cacao butter. But because beauty products use cacao butter so much, it's actually more profitable to sell the cacao butter to, brands that create, like face masks and shampoos and stuff like that. But the cacao butter is actually what has the majority of its medicine inside, and it can be used for depression, and it's a mood enhancer. It increases the heart rate, so it's good for diabetes. It's good for high blood pressure. It's good for so many things. And another little fun fact about the cacao from Guatemala. So cacao from anywhere else, essentially, Costa Rica is a big producer, Southeast Asia, as well as South America. And all of those cacaos actually have a small percentage of caffeine in them, which is fine. I love Costa Rican and Peruvian cacao. But you can definitely feel the caffeine in there, and it causes this kind of like quick, like jittery feeling for me personally. And it still has mostly theobromine, which is the active stimulant in it, and which is like the medicine of it. But here in Guatemala, actually, it has the lowest percentage of caffeine of any cacao in the world. And some of the cacao here, depending on the source, actually has 0% caffeine. So that's also really special. So how you can tell is, Guatemalan cacao will usually take between 15 and 30 minutes to actually take effect.
Huh. That's all good to know. I love learning more about it. I feel like we need to get you on another podcast to talk about cacao and all the other amazing things that you have a lot of information on. Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm a Gemini, so I know a little bit about everything.
I love that. So how about we go ahead and we'll share, where can people find you? I know you've been doing personally some daily live feeds, and you're working on getting your presence out there more on the internet. How can people find you and reach out and learn more about your personal mission, the mission of Mystical Yoga Farm, and beyond?
Yeah, so people are definitely welcome to check out my personal Facebook page, Hendo. That's JAH space HENDO. You can check out the flyer that they made. It has my name, how it is on Facebook. I'm doing a free live series right now called Sat Song, where I'm teaching a song with chords each day, as well as like some spiritual discussions. And I'll be going more into about the project here and permaculture and different things like that. So they can definitely tune in there. The best way to learn more about the Mystical Yoga Farm specifically and our offerings, our website, mysticalyogafarm.com, our Instagram at Mystical Yoga Farm, no caps, no spaces, and our Facebook page, the Mystical Yoga Farm. And you want to look for the one that has our logo as the profile picture, because I think there's one from the past that's out there somewhere. So you want to look for the one that has two volcanoes with the sunrise and an eye on it. That's Mystical Yoga Farm. And we have every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time, we have a free yoga class with a rotating crew of amazing teachers, as well as Wednesday on our Instagram page, we have a free song circle where we're teaching some of these medicine songs and mantras and stuff. And that's at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we're working on creating a Patreon too, where we'll have very special offerings. And that's going to be launched on the full moon this coming Monday. So if you'd like to be updated on that, definitely follow us on Facebook and Instagram, as well as you can sign up for our newsletter. And we have, like I said, we have amazing teacher trainings and retreats, and our 2021 schedule is pretty open. So if people wanted to host something or learn more, definitely reach out. And then in November and December, hopefully, depending on the state of the world, but it's looking like it's going to happen. In November and December, we have some 200-hour yoga teacher trainings happening. And then I want to also just share one last amazing deal. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're like, oh my God, I want to go to the Mystical Yoga Farm as soon as their borders open, or if it's, after 3 months after our borders open, a year after, whatever, we have for a limited time, about another 10 days or something, these amazing prepaid packages, and you can check those out on our Instagram stories as well as our website, the homepage. And they're prepaid packages for 50% off, and each one comes with like a private massage and ceremonial blocks of cacao and a private yoga class. And we have the full menu on our website and our social accounts. And so the idea is that because we're have been struggling a bit during this pandemic to support our local staff, we are offering this 50% discount to where people will essentially buy now for this amazing discount. And then as soon as our borders open, they can schedule their stay and redeem their package anytime after our borders open. So that's really special. But the best way to get in contact is definitely Instagram and Facebook. I check them constantly each day.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that amazing information.
Yeah, thank you.
Really grateful and honored that we were able to get connected. And I know that some of our listeners are really intrigued and excited about all that you're offering out there. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure and really an honor to be on this podcast that I've known about for quite some time, and to just connect in this way. Oh, I saw Mooney just sent me a friend request.
Divine timing. That's awesome.
Yes. So just, thank you guys so much, or thank you Gaias, rather, gender inclusive Gaias, for welcoming me onto here and allowing me to share. And it's also, helped me to reflect on the project and get more inspired and super stoked for when we open up. And yeah, in the spirit of giving and abundance, I'm so grateful for y'all to have had me here, that I want to offer you both 2 free night stays here at the Mystical Yoga Farm, and that can be redeemed anytime when our borders open. And just message me on Facebook or something to plan that out. So that's 2 free nights as a guest that comes with food and stuff. And then if you wanted to stay longer, I would recommend our volunteer program.
Awesome.
I think my heart just exploded.
Yeah.
As if you weren't excited about us enough. Now you almost have to come here.
I'm so honored. Thank you so much for joining and sharing all of that. I know, like I said, some people that are excited. I'm sure our friend Mooney will be watching and seeing what's going on out there.
Yeah,
and
she said sign me up.
She's in. Awesome. So I just want to make sure we respect your time if you're waking up with the sun out there. So again, thank you so much. We'll talk about maybe getting you back on to chat about some other things in the future. And feel free to reach out with any information, and hopefully you'll share some of the links to things we talked about in the Bring Me to Life community. So any of you that are listening and you're not in the Bring Me to Life community group on Facebook yet, please go join it. We share cool stuff in there. We want to see people talking and sharing and commenting and letting us know you listen to this podcast. And you can also check out some really cool things at bringmetolife.com with the number 2. So I think it's about that time, Sila.
Cool. Thanks for waking up.
And shining out.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so honored, and I'll definitely share some links and photos and everything on that page tomorrow. I'll give it a sit down and bless you guys up with some ideas and links and stuff.
The quest to find essence or true meaning, and to really just connect with a higher consciousness.
Connecting with your spirituality is very important.
in this life. By becoming mindful of all of them, you can realize where you are and if that is leading you to where you want to go.
Listen to the little simple things, because it's those little simple things that are going to shift you vibrationally in such a way that will prepare you to become very intuitively minded and ready to step forward on the next part of your path.
I hope you can feel the love that's inside you, it's inside me, that connects us.
Thanks for shining on with us.